Westside Church in Bend, Oregon. This is Behind the Message. In this podcast, we take you behind what we teach here at Westside. I am Ben Fleming.
And I'm Evan Earwicker. I appreciated the little head bob dance to our intro music.
Still love this music.
Do you?
After all these years.
Every week I think, man, we should get some different music.
Yeah. Where do you get it from?
I think this one was like Music Bed or one of those, music licensing services.
So you have to buy it off of there?
Yeah.
Okay.
You license it for whatever the use is.
So it's just a bunch of canned stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's nice.
I think a lot of people make a good living, like creating music for creative projects. And
this is what they do? They
guess.
Just make the short versions.
Because for like commercial, if you're doing a commercial licensing, music can be thousands and thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
And some really talented stuff. But, people aren't listening to this to find out about the music licensing,
They're not.
Are they? No.
Well, it's really behind the message of the podcast.
I know.
All the way behind the scenes.
For the Happy Birthday song, I know that was copyrighted, I think, until very recently, for like 100 years. And so no one could use it in like TV and film. They were notoriously stingy with the licensing of it. So if you look back through film and TV over the last like 30 years, no one's ever going to sing Happy Birthday. They always have to sing a different song during birthdays. For licensing. It's all licensing.
What's the song? When do I infringe on that? I'm making a movie. Can I go to you? And is that the song?
I don't know. Yeah.
At what point does it become a song?
How much of the song is too much?
Yeah, I don't know. I was at a trivia night recently, and one of the questions was name the top 3 most sung songs in North America. And it was Auld Lang Syne,
Really?
Happy Birthday, and For He's a Jolly Good Fellow. Right?
How are they tracking the singing of He's a Jolly Good Fellow? Do they have monitors in the kinds of places where people are saying, let's sing it. Let's sing it again.
How do we know that?
For He's a Jolly
Yeah, and then when does the
tracking
restart? Well, we sang it 3 times. We went through the chorus.
Yeah.
I know. I think
99 bottles of beer on the wall. One of the most popular songs.
Have you ever gotten far in that, by the way? Like on a road trip or something?
That's a great question. Honestly, it's been a few years since
you've gone all the way through.
Busted that song out.
See, we bemoan the expansion of technology all the time, but then I think specifically about road trips and some of the things that we would do, and they are not great, guys. Singing 99 bottles of beer, playing the ABC game all the way down the road off the side. You guys, these were not that great.
They're all gone. Now it's just iPads and audiobooks.
Which is kind of awesome. Did you guys listen to something on road trips? Was there like a family tape, CD? No?
Yeah, I mean, I think we would listen to Adventures in Odyssey. We were just talking about it.
You would?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I almost specifically just think of that in animated movie form.
Yeah, we were primarily you could buy the books of tapes and then eventually CDs, but tapes mostly. And they would come in like this plasticky folder thing that you open up, and then the tapes would be stuck in there.
Yeah. I know the plastic.
Yeah.
I can
pick
see
your
it.
tape. And I always had favorite episodes, and the episodes you're like, ugh, this one again. The pacing is not right on this one or whatever. But,
Lindsay?
I'd read books in the back seat.
Yeah.
You can do that without getting sick.
No, I can't anymore. I can't even look down at my phone without getting sick in the car. But back when I was a kid, I would just read chapter books.
I would read Calvin and Hobbes in the back of the van all the time. And then we had a big Winnie the Pooh book, Chronicles of Narnia, kind of the classic stuff. Yeah. But then we would listen to Garrison Keeler, Prairie Home Companion. Ever listen to Garrison Keeler, Lindsay?
No.
I think I lost you on that one. Yeah.
Did my eyes glaze over?
He's like a comic storyteller.
Okay.
Like they're long form stories that he performs them live.
Yeah, it's a live radio show performed in front of, in a theater.
And they're long stories about Lake Wobegon, his hometown, which is not a real place.
Yeah.
Fantastic storytelling. Really funny.
We started listening as adults, like freshly married, we started oddly listening to Garrison Keeler.
Oh, really?
So not like because of my parents, just
Yeah.
we were 20-somethings being like, Garrison Keeler, that's our guy.
Okay.
Then, he got Me Too'd, so that didn't,
Oh, did he?
It didn't end well for
I'm
Garrison.
sorry.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you added that.
Before you're like, and he is my role model in all things.
I
Yeah.
literally don't know a single thing about the guy, with the exception of we grew up with the tapes.
And actually, Justin is switching for us. Hi, Justin. And you might know this fact. The person that took over for Garrison Keeler is Chris Theeley from Nickel Creek.
Oh my
That's right.
gosh. So Nickel Creek was one of those CDs that was in the van too. That was one of like 6 that were just kind of in rotation. Point of Grace,
Yeah.
Nickel Creek, Wow 95.
Sure. I think that was probably peak of the Wows.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. 95, 96.
It
I
became a
specifically
cash grab
remember.
after that. Although Wow Worship, probably 2000, with one of my favorite early worship songs, which was "The Lord is my light and my salvation, whom shall I fear?" The Lord is my light and my salvation.
Whom
Yeah.
shall I fear?
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Okay. Dun, 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 right? Okay. Yeah. I think Inside Out was on that one.
Was it?
Yeah.
From Hillsong?
The Hillsong one, the Joel Houston.
Oh.
I think that was the first time I'd heard that song was when it got on.
I think the first Hillsong record I ever had or heard was probably Best Friend, the green, neon green and white
too.
record. With Jesus, you are my best friend. You will always be. Nothing will ever change that. Was Inside Out on that record?
No, that was
wasn't.
later.
Later.
Inside Out was the record, I think.
I don't know.
No? My first Hillsong ones, I just remember the art of the Hillsong script when then Darlene Zschech was always raising her hands or a microphone or something.
Yeah.
And I think she was on the CD itself and on the album cover.
Yeah.
Almost always.
Yeah.
Or maybe, was it
A letter-
the other guy? Ben Fielding?
Yeah.
The guy who did God is great and his praise. Yeah.
Reuben Morgan was a big name back in the day.
back then, maybe
Reuben
it was
Morgan.
Reuben Morgan that was
Yeah.
on the cover of those, actually, now that you say it.
Yeah, it's a good question. But it was Shout to the Lord, and then God is in the House, I think was the second record, or Let the Peace of God Reign. Anyway, now
Yeah.
I'm just guessing.
Yeah. Reuben Morgan's a good one.
That's funny. The last one I'll mention is the CD that I would listen to on road trips. I remember specifically driving to Idaho, listening to Crystal Lewis, Beauty for Ashes, on a CD man in the car.
Oh, a CD man in the car.
Yeah.
Nice.
And the song, if you remember it, is Beauty for Ashes, Strength for Fear. And so this is the story. I might get the details wrong, but at the time, my oldest brother had been very involved in church and then was kind of not as engaged in his faith anymore. And my middle brother, who we all know and works here, Brent, would do Bible studies in their shared apartment. And so as an evangelistic tool to hopefully loop our older brother back into the faith,
Okay.
they, during one, this is terrible, Brent, during one of their Bible studies, they decided that because my oldest brother was getting home from work, and it's like, what we should do is we should have him come in the middle and we'll pray for him. And we're going to have him sing a worship song.
You're going to have him sing, the one you're bringing back into the fold, of course.
And so this is how the story is in my mind. Again, the details might be fuzzy, but they brought my oldest brother back in, sat him in the middle, and had him perform and sing Beautiful Ashes, Strength. I don't know if he was snapping or not.
I hope he was.
I hope he was snapping.
Yeah.
But
Did
yeah.
you use the word intervention?
Why did he do it? You just say no.
He is a generous soul
Oh my
who
gosh.
wants to do what you want him to do.
That story encapsulates so much of that era of
Yeah.
Christianity, between the music and
Yeah.
then kind of the performative intervention.
And Brent's general personality to this day.
His general personality.
I shouldn't sell people out on this podcast. It's not the place.
Brent, he talks about it openly. I think we all have done our own version of that.
In a future episode, we'll bring him in to set the record straight on what actually happened.
Okay, yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
Yeah, put a pin in this one.
Yeah.
Before we move on to David and Goliath, Lindsay, when we first started this podcast many years ago, one of our first episodes was greatest worship songs of all time. Do you have a greatest worship song of all time? It's a tough one to put you on. I know. And you could go a lot of different ways, right? You could go influential, like Shout to the Lord Comes to Me.
Yeah, that's
great
where I was
song,
gonna go.
but it was also the first of that like mega bridge kind of. I think it changed worship music, right? So you could go that route, or you could go favorite one to sing or listen to.
I was going to say Shout to the Lord, because I think that is probably like, for most people our age, our generation, that was a very formative song. You're right. It changed worship moving forward. So, gosh, I don't know. I'm very much put on the spot.
Do hymns belong in this conversation?
That's a different conversation.
Yeah, not a worship song.
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about worship songs, like a Shout to the Lord, not even just for our age, it was such a, it just created. I think it started the worship movement as we have known it. You know, which is completely different from hymns that have been sung throughout church history
for a long time,
going way back.
Yeah.
300, 400, 500 years, but
Awesome God, Rich Mullins.
That was
That's a good one.
Yeah, huge.
Yes.
Huge.
and just the most unsingable weird verses.
It's true. That chorus only.
Chorus only. Yeah.
It gave permission to drummers for the first time in church, if you had drums at the time, to kick snare, right? To cut the music and you know? That was the first time I remember that ever happening on an album that we could listen to.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, look at the drummer like doing like the solo kind of a thing, you know? Look at that.
Yep. When he rolled up his sleeves, he ain't just putting on the Ritz.
What is that line?
I don't know. I don't know.
My dad loved that line.
Really? I don't know what it means.
I don't get it.
Is it because it's kind of cheeky? It's kind of funny?
I think so. It's like he's not just pretending, right? Like that's it. You're not just making up this.
And hold on, is that the opening line of that song?
Oh, we got
It's the opening of a verse.
Yeah, but is it verse? I mean,
I think it is.
Rich.
I think it is.
What a bold move, bro.
Oh, God is an awesome God. Well, that was a full like choir behind, right? That would come in for the between the verses or between the lines in the verse.
Oh, good
You're
question.
just putting on the Ritz. Oh, God is an awesome God.
Yeah.
It is the first opening line, you guys.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Wow, what a move.
Yeah.
That's how you know when someone is writing solo. No one is saying that's a good idea or let's keep going. He just committed, man.
And he said, "This is the reason I get to write solo for the rest of my life."
Yeah.
Right? What else? What other big? Why can I not think of big Rich Mullins songs right now?
Not Step by Step. It's Sometimes by Step.
Sometimes by step. Okay, I legitimately love that one.
That's a beautiful song.
Yeah.
And there's no talk of Ritz.
Yeah. The Brooke Fraser, Sometimes by Step, the like Incense that she did a little while ago. I think that one, I think it got lost because I think people felt like it wasn't super singable congregationally. I love that version.
Give me the verse of Sometimes by Step.
I can't remember the verse. I can actually remember the Brooke Fraser one. The "May my prayer like incense rise before you, giving of my hands a sacrifice." Yeah,
you are my God.
so good. I can't remember the verse of the like incense. Was there a verse?
I'm
It's
literally
like
reading
Awesome
the
God.
lyrics. I have no idea how it goes.
Okay.
Read the lyrics. What do they say?
Go back. Sometimes the night was beautiful.
Sometimes the night was beautiful. Sometimes the day was
Are you making it up?
No.
Okay.
We
am not
could, we
familiar.
wouldn't know.
Yeah, maybe immediately we were just ripping off the chorus of that.
Yeah.
Nobody was singing the words.
A Rich Mullins line I've always loved. I think it's very well written. Is I'm shaking like a leaf. You have been king of my.
Yeah.
Now would you be my Prince of Peace?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's all Rich Mullins.
That's all Rich Mullins.
Amazing. One of the funny things when we talk about these songs, I see the overheads for the projector. I can see like my mom's handwriting at the top of the overheads that we would use.
That's amazing.
Sweet.
That's so amazing.
Awesome God was in blue. It was one of the only ones that was in blue. I'm not really sure why.
That's great. Yeah, Rich Mullins. So before he was killed, because he was killed in a auto accident, but he basically sold all of his possessions, and he moved out to a reservation and just lived among the Native American population.
Really?
I think in New Mexico. Was it New Mexico, Arizona? Arizona, maybe.
know.
Anyway, but yeah, he was just like all in,
Huh.
A lot
I
of
didn't
respect,
know that he had
for,
died.
for Rich Mullins.
I bet he had to have made a ton of money too. I mean, he's one of 4 artists at the time that were making Christian music with that much regularity and that much popularity.
Yeah, I mean, going back to the royalty conversation.
Yeah.
Just on, Awesome God, it was probably crazy.
Sure.
Everybody was singing that. So,
Yeah. There was like 6 songs any of us were singing that weren't hymns. Yeah, and that was one of them.
Yeah.
That's, I bet we could tie in putting on the Ritz and pulling up his sleeves to David and Goliath. There seems to be a great tie-in somewhere in there. It's a little violent.
I appreciate, Ben, when you segue, I'm just going to keep talking and not shut up. And you're like, we've got to segue to some actual
here's the
conversation.
thing, and I do want the listener to know, these are my favorite conversations. I can talk about it forever.
To your credit, we're 16 minutes in.
I know.
Yeah.
It's really awesome.
Yeah.
I love these conversations, and I can listen to them for hours with other people. It's my favorite kind of podcast.
That's good.
I do feel responsible to like maybe Justin in the room, who's like, dear goodness, let's get to some of the content.
Wrap this. Yeah, he's giving us the wrap sign right now. We're just starting, Justin.
So it was interesting. We talked about 2 different ways you could potentially go about teaching David and Goliath. There was like this pre-David and Goliath battle, being called by God, being found in kind of an unassuming manner and somehow becoming king. And then we talked about the post, like the not much of a hero David, who did a lot of weird and gross stuff the older that he got.
Yeah, well, yeah, and let's explain what we mean, because people might be like, what do you mean, weird and gross? But
Yeah.
He has Bathsheba's husband killed so he can marry her. It does not turn out well. He ends up losing the kingdom to his son Absalom, and then his son is killed by his men, and it's really messy. And then by the end of his life, he just does some weird stuff on his deathbed. And so there's these moments where he's not this like shining hero of the faith as much as maybe these early days with David and Goliath.
And both of those are super compelling. And especially we were talking about, because the entire idea behind this series is that these old stories that we have at their very, very, very best show us that we need a savior and a champion. You ended up bringing that in to the conversation as well, but not really from the not so much a hero perspective, but you kind of stuck with the story. It's a very behind the message conversation specific, but why pivot that way?
Well, yeah, just as I was thinking through, trying to, talk through the entire story of David or the whole life of David with all the complexities of, his rise from obscurity in the pasture to then he kills Goliath to then he becomes one of Saul's guys to then that falling out that happens and then he's on the run and then he has the chance to kill Saul and he doesn't and then Saul dies and then he becomes king. Like by the time you get even halfway through that story, you're out of time.
Yeah,
on a Sunday morning.
You said he has more ink dedicated to him in Scripture than anybody
besides Jesus. Yeah, he's that interesting of a character. I mean, we could spend months, we could spend a whole year on a character study of the life of David. So knowing that, I felt like, no, we're going to talk about David and Goliath specifically, focus on that story, just because, the realities of, we've got 25 minutes.
Sure.
and you do some silly intro, you got about 22 minutes, right? By the way, I'm about to win against you in fantasy football, which I did not think would happen.
And the church is so happy.
Yeah.
Who doesn't love
I asked them to pray.
The funny thing is, though, is your fantasy team's really good. You weren't an underdog coming into the game yesterday, for sure. Maybe as a football mind.
Well, yeah. Which that's actually does play into some of the content I brought in about how David is famously the underdog compared to Goliath. And that is true when you look at size and strength. But when you look at battlefield advantage in the way that David approaches Goliath, actually, Malcolm Gladwell makes the case that the advantage is so strongly in David's court, right? Like, David has all the advantages as an expert marksman with his sling, approaching at a distance. He's got speed, he's got agility. The only thing Goliath can do is hand-to-hand combat. And in hand-to-hand combat, he would have absolutely destroyed David, but David changes the rules of the game. And I kind of talked about that, how if we want to approach our giants on their terms, we're going to lose. But God invites us into something different.
Yeah, it is just from a competition standpoint. I wonder why somebody didn't raise the flag on this. This kid's got a ranged attack, and we're allowing this to be the duel? Like, that's ridiculous. Who does that?
Yeah, honestly, it's the Ant-Man effect, right? Like, it's this little guy that can just zip around and get you know? Which I didn't say.
But you're right in that culturally, especially as the two armies stand opposite each other for however long.
Yeah.
And the fear that everybody has comes from the idea that they're locked into a certain set of rules, right? Because if somebody else would have thought of this, and maybe somebody did, but it didn't come up in the way that it came up with David, then maybe somebody else would have won or expressed the boldness or whatever. But they were looking through it through the lens, a very narrow lens of this is how this has to go. This is how this match has to happen. And maybe by some miracle, someone could kill Goliath with a sword, but it's not going to be me. I'm not going to take a shot at it. And to have the perspective to pull up and look and say, there's a better way, there's a different way, which ultimately was kind of the point of the message that I took away, was that Jesus is like the biggest version of this. Yeah. That there's all these rules and all of these histories, and it seems like it has to go in a certain direction, and then Jesus changes the rules. That's the idea, right?
Yeah. And to skip over any of the obvious, inspirational takeaways that we can apply personally from that story, as far as what it looks like to have courage in the face of fear, what it looks like to trust in God when we are up against impossible odds. All of those, I think, to just ignore that and jump right to Jesus is our champion. Mm-hmm. I felt like we needed to spend some time looking at those pretty obvious and clear takeaways for our own lives when we face giants, but then to acknowledge that where Jesus is found in the story is in the fact that oftentimes we come up against giants that we are unable to have courage in the face of. We come up with giants that are too big for us. We have things that our faith isn't strong enough to hold up. And because of Jesus, we have a champion who goes for us into that battle and faces those giants and faces down the things that can actually kill us: sin and death and the grave. And this is really the story of the coming of Jesus as told through the lens of the Old Testament, is when our way and our faith and our trust in God run short, we come to this place where we can't do it without a Savior. Mm-hmm. And that's where Jesus steps in and goes into the valley for us.
It gives a lot of hope in the face of foregone conclusions, mm-hmm. right? I think that was maybe one of the subtext or the feelings that I got from yesterday. There are a lot of things in life that, depending on what you're going through, what you've been through before, you kind of play out these results in your head of, well, this happened and I know how this goes. It's a foregone conclusion that we end up in. And that's a huge encouragement to think nothing has to be rote or obvious, or we don't have to continue to go down this road. And sometimes I've noticed the older I get, the harder it is to stop long enough and pull out of that narrative, whether it's my thought about someone else, where I go, I see that person, I've heard them speak on this. Okay, that's who they are. And that's this little box that I'm going to put them in. It's a foregone conclusion. And not only do I put that on other people, I can put that on myself in my own situation. And yeah, this pulls you out of that and encourages you to have hope. I think. And maybe that's one of the greatest takeaways of the whole thing, is that David, out of nowhere, it's like hope arrives with this crazy level of expertise, and it is exactly right for the moment, right? It's not just right, period. It's right for this moment in time.
Yeah. And the possibility that what we assume is going to happen isn't necessarily what will happen. I think, like you're saying, that's the nature of hope, is that we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen next. And that can either create a lot of fear or it can create a lot of hope. And as people who believe in Jesus and people of faith, I think it tips the scales towards hope, or it should, right? And not knowing, and this is this is where in Pentecostal circles, which our church is part of a Pentecostal denomination, what I think sometimes we get wrong is this desire to almost know the future or have it told to us in a way that will just kind of spell everything out. And I understand, there's ways that the prophetic word can lead us towards what God is doing at some point in the future. That's wonderful and great. But this idea that I want to know how things turn out to make it like easier on my faith, I think that's backwards. It's what we don't know and that we put hope in that I think stirs up a sense of reliance on Jesus.
Yeah, we want the prophetic word so that our hope feels like it has really sure footing. That's not really how hope works all the time, though, right? Maybe it even rarely works like that, knowing exactly not just the outcome, but how. I remember that was a big part of the prophetic movement as growing up. It wasn't, as I think we can all kind of agree on this generalized how everything's going to end up. Jesus is going to come back and redeem the world. And, there's kind of these big picture ideas that across Christianity we can agree on, but it was always the how. We want to know how. We want to know when. We just passed another rapture time, which I missed again. I didn't even know this one was happening.
TikTok or rapture talk, I guess, was hopping with.
Was it specifically TikTok?
Jesus was coming back at a specific time last week, right?
Yeah, it was last week. It was all over TikTok.
Yeah? Why? It's this hope thing, right? Do you think it comes back to hope or control? I don't know. TikTok specifically, never know how these seeds are planted, but what is that?
I don't know. My assumption would be control. We like to have control. We like to be convinced we have control that we've never had and we never will have. Just to have that feeling, especially now, in the global climate of our country, like to have something anchoring you that you can say, I'm certain of this, that is powerful for the psyche and our consciousness, like our attitudes. That goes a really long way, So.
Yeah. And a desire for control is a desire to live a life without faith. Right? We've talked about this in terms of certainty. We want certainty, so we don't actually have to have faith, because faith is hard. And so just give me certainty, not only about what I believe, but also give me certainty about the future and what's going to happen next. And wouldn't that be nice? Then we can live by sight and not by faith. And this whole thing is about the opposite. The whole thing.
And I am not opposed to the movement of the prophetic. I think of the prophetic is different now. I think of prophets helping change the heart of people to turn back toward God is the greatest function of the prophet, and then not to tell the future, right? And maybe it's pop culture that over a certain amount of time, that word prophet changed completely into, no, we got to tell you what's going to happen over the next 5, 6, 7 years. I'm kind of over that happening. I think it can happen, and if it happens, it's great. I know that there was a moment in the movement that I was growing up in where it was like that was like the king of all things that could happen inside of a service. I don't need it to happen anymore. I don't need to know. I think if God's going to make it happen, and we'll talk about this a little bit with Jonah and the whale in the next while. If God needs to make it happen, then great. But I just don't need that anymore. And sometimes I go back and forth between, well, I'm kind of sad, and no, I've matured a little bit in my faith, faith. There you go. Maybe that's the thing.
Maybe because the prophets in the Old Testament, even they're speaking as kind of a mouthpiece, right, of what God is wanting to say to the nation or neighboring nations or kings or whatever. Sometimes, that is speaking to very specific things that will happen in the future, but oftentimes it's not. It's speaking to rebuke or correct something that's currently happening. It's speaking a vision of a preferred future, but not in a prediction kind of way, but instead saying, this is what God wants from you, or this is what God has for you. And if it ever boils down, in our day to think like, well, God's going to speak through people in our services or in our churches to tell us, the outcome of an election, or to tell us how this is going to go or that's going to go. That feels more like this fortune telling, Back to the Future with the sports almanac style. Like if we could just know, then we can really get ahead. And I just don't know that God is interested in leading His church in that way, to where we're fortune tellers going around like having the inside track on the outcome of the next thing, I'm
just thinking of Christians as Biff now.
I've met some Christian guys
for sure
remind me of Biff.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. And what made me feel a little suspicious sometimes in that, again, wasn't that people could have a prophetic word. I noticed that we never had the bad ones. There's a lot of bad ones, tough ones in the Old Testament prophets that, maybe they start with, eventually it's going to be, you're going to live here and it's going to be like this. And there's a lot of them that are like, but first famine for a really long time. Yeah. And people are going to die, and you're going to go into exile. And we never had those ones. It was never like, wildfires are going to come and then this is going to happen. It was that's something that relates also to this life of David in here, is the prophets were so in tune to this big, larger, grand plan that God had, and the writers of Scripture with David were so in tune with this massive story. It's not just a long story; it's a very complicated story. The Bible is so honest about David. He probably could have used a little bit more positive propaganda, but it's brutally honest, and I'm always really impressed with the Bible when it relates to that. There's not a lot of shaving off of the edges necessarily of the story.
Yeah. So if you think like the anti-hero type is something that, television executives made up recently with Breaking Bad or whatever, I think we talked about this, but no, like the Bible's been very honestly looking at characters from the beginning. And even going back to the Noah story, what I didn't get to in the Noah story was, as soon as he gets off the boat, he gets like crazy drunk. Yeah. And like rolls around naked and shames his whole family. And his son is like, "Oh, Dad, no, what are you doing?" And like, yikes. That's not good. That doesn't fit the mural on the Sunday school classroom wall. I hope not.
Naked Jonah. Noah.
Son of a gun. You did it again.
Oh, can you imagine? I like as the kids get older, it just gets more and more honest as the murals get more and more honest. Yep. Jonah's cursing God and angry about his big leaf that died.
Yeah, begging to die under his. Anyway, I think there's real messiness in the narrative, and we don't want to shy away from that or present a false take on how the Bible's laid out, because it all matters.
Why is it there? Why is it like that, do you think?
Why is it so gritty?
Yeah, because we've even talked about how so much of Scripture was like written down for posterity in Babylonian exile, and these are people that like could have some motives to shave off the rough edges, and they don't. There's that epilogue of Noah is crazy, and you could have left it out, but they didn't. I don't know. Why is it like that?
Yeah, or it's Abraham, basically selling off his wife to the Egyptian king because he thinks it's a good, these terrible, really revealing things. And I take it as, it's a reflection of the commitment of the scribes and the authors who are writing this stuff down to tell an honest reflection of both the narrative and the time in which these narratives took place. This is not a nice, pleasant utopia kind of world that these stories are coming from. It's a violent, brutal, messy, kind of terrifying place that's happening, you know, and again, this points to our need for Messiah to come.
Yeah, there's these little pieces that they do well, and they're representative little bits of the story. And if you're following with us on Sundays, you can find these little pieces that are like, ooh, that's part of the Jesus story. They covered the lion's den for Daniel with a big stone, you know, and there's these little elements of it, and all of these heroes do something really well that's reflective of Jesus. And then there's this swing in the other direction that points even further to Jesus, saying, see, even your best can't quite get there.
Which is, I hope this comes out throughout this whole series. That is what's so beautiful is we talk about David and how we need a champion to face down our giants. And when we look at the life of David, what we don't need is David. Like he can't do it. He can't get the job done. He can't stay pure. He can't hang in there without taking these wild swings into, you know, violence or anger or murder or whatever. So we need a better David. And you know what? We have one in Jesus, you know, and so that's, I hope the point is when we look at these stories, we don't just say, you know, and so we need a leader like David. Well, no, that's not what we need. We need a better David, and we need Jesus. And I hope that comes out. In the later two services, I didn't tie this in the 8 o'clock service, I don't think. But one of my favorite tie-ins with the David and Goliath story was just picturing David writing the 23rd Psalm after he faces Goliath, because he's reflecting on what prepared him for that moment. You know, the Lord is my shepherd, and what he learned about God in those days. But then he gets to the last few verses where he says, "Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I won't be afraid. You're with me." And I was imagining David remembering looking down into that valley as he's about to set out to potentially die, but having this confidence of like, I'm not alone in the valley. And that was really the pastoral invitation, I think, yesterday. Not to the 8:15, they got no pastoral invitation, but but the last two services got it. But which is this idea of like, if you're facing a giant and looking into a valley and you don't know how it's going to turn out, like, you have a better David. He's going there before you even get there.
Yeah, and
David, what a invitation.
David's at his best, I think, as a really honest poet. He's iffy as a king, certainly iffy as a husband or a father. He has an honest poet. I think the older I get, again, the more thankful I am for the Psalms than ever. He allows you to ride this wave really honestly of, I was enraged, or I was afraid, and I ran, and I was a coward, and you saw me, and you rescued me, and you pulled me out of whatever I was in. And that is, again, the honesty piece of the whole thing. The fact that he gives us the artistry of the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. What an incredible, complicated, difficult, I know I'm kind of returning to the point again and again, but that's pretty special that we get to experience that and see that in the ancient context, because there's not many things that I relate to more in Scripture than that wave of fear and emotion and elation and victory and sadness and wondering. It's all the human experience that's right in there, and David lets us in on it.
Yeah, he's saying, you know, why do the wicked prosper? Like, I don't think any of this matters, because look, the righteous and the wicked, they get treated the same from you, God. What is going on? And then a few verses later, he's like, as the deer pants for the water, so my soul longs for you. You know, it's like David's complicated, and many things can be true about him. He can be frustrated and completely feeling like he's missing God and doesn't understand it all. At the same time, he can say, you know, I love your instruction. I love your law, God. I need to be in your house. And I think we like to distill things down and put people in boxes of either you're a good guy or you're a bad guy, or, you know, you're on my team or you're not on my team. You're part of the tribe, you're not part of the tribe. And just look at these characters. Like, they're all over the map, and yet somehow their stories last, and we find resonance with that. It's cool.
I wonder if there was a lot of fallout after the death of David and the kingdom moves on to others. of kind of sadness. We talk about presidents and leaders and stuff that we have and there's so much hope, whether, I would agree with exactly what you're hoping for or not, or who you want elected. There's so much that goes into it, and then they all go away, and then things are not fixed. Mm-hmm. And the story of these nations with God specifically, Judges talks about, we want a king, give us a king, give us a king, give us a king. God's like, this is not a good idea. I know you want a king like all the other nations. They're bad. This doesn't work out. And then David's like pushing, his presence is like pushing all the chips into the center of the table and being like, finally, yes, we had people that built up the high places, didn't tear them down, were good ones, bad ones, but now David. Yeah. And then David dies, and it's like, yeah, things are still tough. Right. And we're still trying to sort this out. And I wonder if there's a lot of it.
And you remember that God spoke to David and said, you don't get to build the temple. Like, David wanted to, right? And I think the line that he says in prayer, he says, how is it that I live in a palace of cedar and you live in a tent, God, And God just says, nope, it's not going to be you to do this. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, with Solomon building the temple, so there is this generational thing where, and maybe this speaks again to the gritty reality of the story, is David didn't get to do all the stuff. As he lived so large and all these stories, and yet the crowning achievement for him late in life would have been to get to build the temple, right? God's temple, God's man after God's own heart, and he built God's temple. Mm-hmm. And God was like, nope, your son can do that, not you. And I just, there's this push and pull, and it's never like you think, I guess.
Yeah.
And it's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's never, and it actually does give me hope in our current context. I think about all the kings of the United States, the presidents that we've had, how legendary in my childhood it sounded like Reagan was, mm-hmm. And he was the crowning achievement of especially the Republican Party. And then I remember Obama getting elected, and it was like this massive, euphoric, finally.
Hope and change, yeah.
For so many things, And I know a lot of people have put that on Trump now, and the wheels of time continue to turn, Right. And there's ups and downs. There's high places, and then there's tearing them down. And I think one way would be to look at it and go, see, this all sucks. It's very Ecclesiastes. Like, time is just going to eat away at all these things, and there's just going to be destruction. It doesn't really matter. I think the hopefulness is we've been here before. Yeah. It's David, and it's Solomon, and it's Saul, and it's a familiar story that will continue to be violent and difficult and complicated, and we should show up in these places. But God has been faithful through all those things too.
Yeah, right. I brought up Miracle on Ice, the 1980 men's hockey team that beat the Soviet Union. Didn't get much of a response, so I didn't talk about it.
I was excited about it.
But it's a good reminder of like, that was a huge, huge deal, obviously before we were born. But I mean, in the moment, there would have been no like bigger clap line than talking about Miracle on Ice.
Oh my gosh.
And granted, I picked some really, really terrible examples of David and Goliath stories.
I thought Babe was great. I'm in on Babe.
I think by the end I was like, I just brought up Babe so I could do the Ba Ram U thing. And it just felt like a cheap knockoff of the things that you've been doing lately with the movies and the singing. And I was like, oh, I want to try that too. And then I quoted Babe the pig.
Dude, Ba Ram U is a great quote. You have to put that in there, and you did it.
I did. People talk about like, indulgent preachers that like need to cut it out, and I was like, oh, this is so being so indulgent.
People complain about indulgent preachers, and I understand why, but also that crowd wants like an invitation to feel a little bit lighter sometimes too. So true. The crowd asks for it. I personally think.
Yeah.
Right, Lindsay? Is that right?
Yes, I would agree. An appropriately placed comedic break is nice sometimes on a Sunday morning.
Yes. I ask you because you're just so much more professional than I am, Lindsay. And so I can be an indulgent preacher. So
yeah. Oh, to your credit, Ben, I think oftentimes the crowd is absolutely laughing with you, and I think they're awkwardly laughing around whatever I'm saying sometimes. So you sing Veggie Tales or,
Yeah.
A Whole New World, and you're like, that's hilarious. That guy's so funny. I quote Babe
so
the
dumb.
pig, and people are like, oh, yikes. I'm going to laugh so it's not quite as cringy in here,
I loved Babe.
But,
no,
yeah.
you're right. There's that would have been the biggest thing.
Yeah.
It was the biggest thing.
Yeah,
It wasn't a hockey game. It was the defeat of communism.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know?
It represented something crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you talk to, I don't know, anybody under the age of 30, and their understanding of communism would sound a lot different, right? Even than certainly than our parents. The world has shifted and changed so much. And that's not that long ago. 1980 is just not that long ago. And yeah, everything continues to turn, and God stays faithful, and leaders are going to continue to let us down and lift us up.
Yeah.
And we're going to keep riding this wave, and hopefully, we can be reminded that Jesus is with us.
Yeah. And the story of Saul and David and Solomon, it should remind us, we always want a king. We always want them to lead us in such a way that solves all of our problems. And in the end, they will all fail us. Right. And so, we just got to keep going back to Jesus and put our hope where it can be held. You know, we put our hope on leaders and people, and they're fallible and they're problematic, and things crumble and fall. And our hope is that when we put our faith and our hope and reliance on Jesus, it won't fail. And then maybe this is the bigger point.
It's part of the goal for us to not be narcissistic about ourselves and our own spot in time and our own greatness. I think we feel exceptional. Every generation has somehow felt like, no, but this leader that we elect and we put into power, that's different than all the other ones.
I think it was, we were talking through the Daniel story, and that dream he interprets for the king, where the statues that represent the different empires, and eventually that it all gets knocked over and becomes the mountain of the Lord. And I was thinking about that, like maybe we should at some point in this series, like walk the church through, like, imagine that day when the United States is gone. And even saying that, people are like, well,
crazy, right? Yeah.
We're going to be here until Jesus comes back because we are the New Jerusalem or whatever, people might think. Yeah. But to just encourage people, like, stop thinking apocalyptically about our current moment, and maybe just open yourselves up to the fact that one day all the things that seem to matter so much about the direction of our country won't matter at all, because our country will be gone and replaced by who knows who, whether it's in 300 years, 1,000 years, 3 years, who knows? But when that day comes, will the faith that we have today have mattered? Will it hold up? Will people be able to read your journals from your quiet time in the morning and say, that still is right, because it's unattached from our current moment, in the way that we're not putting our hope in our current moment, but in something that transcends that, And I don't know if people would be offended by that idea that one day the U.S. is gone, but...
Well, I mean, think about references in Scripture. You talked about the temple earlier, Solomon's temple. That was the thing. We finally did it. We finally had David the king. We've got Solomon the king. We built the temple. We did the whole thing. The presence of God now lives with us in this place. And then Jesus came and was like, that thing's going to be razed to the ground. And everybody was like, kill him now. Never. Could never happen. But of course, even it's funny, because the Psalms are the way that they are, or the Proverbs, or these stories, they are not in reference into bowing down before the deification of a human leader. They are the journals that you're talking about that have stood the test of time. Yeah. And of course, Jesus' words in and of themselves. That's why. Yeah. That's why. Because they weren't every dollar in the middle of the table toward it's David or bust. Yeah. And that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. It reminds me of the moment where Nehemiah is like going to rebuild the walls, and they're looking at the ruins of the temple, and the prophet says, the glory of the later temple is going to be better than the former. And they just start like weeping, because like, there's no way. Like, the former temple was glorious. What we have now, what we will have, is terrible in comparison to that. And it points to, stop putting your hope in these bricks. Stop putting your hope in these leaders. Our hope has to be all the way in the camp of the kingdom that is coming, and the king of that kingdom. And I think anytime we put our hope in less than that, we're setting ourselves up for sadness.
It requires a certain amount of humility to believe that something could come that's greater than you or your moment or your leader or your leadership. And it's, I mean, funny enough, this manifested itself, I think, in baseball in our culture more than anything else outside of politics. When Babe Ruth hit 60 home runs as a New York Yankee, and then Roger Maris had a couple extra games, and the Yankee fans even kind of hated him, but he hit 61. But then ultimately, Babe Ruth had hit 714 home runs over his career, and Hank Aaron, a black man, was on the verge of hitting 715. And it was everything. It was racism. It was the deification of a man named Babe Ruth, and the idea that you could come in, and there's letters that were written to Hank Aaron, hate letters, that were about how dare you attempt to destroy like the American institution that is Babe Ruth. This is about home runs. Like, who cares? But we worship at the feet of this thing that we feel like should be the final arrival of everything that we have ever hoped for. And God continues to plod through this life with us as things continue on. And then people hit more home runs and teams come and go. And yeah, we are so prone to that. We want that so bad. We want our era to be the best or most important and impactful. And it's just not how it works.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I wasn't going to use the that baseball reference. I'm glad you did, because I was thinking about it, but I didn't.
Underdogs. Hank Aaron hit 715.
Yeah, I was going to say 715. Yeah, 755.
For
right.
sure.
Yeah, that was what I was going to say.
Dude, I can recite for you.
I can tell.
The call on the radio from Vin Scully the night that he hit 715. I can say it. I won't do it.
Say
but
it.
That's how sick I am. You know?
I can't imagine by myself watching a baseball game start to finish.
On TV?
Yeah. I mean, like as a social
yourself.
thing, like in a group, absolutely.
Yeah.
You're watching a game, and I can't imagine all by myself being like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to watch an entire baseball game.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is I don't know if
I know. I'm sorry, Ben.
No.
I don't want to break your heart.
Dude, I get it. I get how people feel about baseball. Baseball's music, though. It's not a movie.
Baseball is music, says the guy who loves baseball more than anything.
But you don't sit down. There are some people in this life that go, I got the new whatever album. I'm going to go to my room and listen to it. And you're kind of like, okay, those people are funny. Like, why don't you just put it on your car the next time you go for a drive? That's me. I'm going to go into my room and listen to the album guy. Baseball's best done, though, as like ambiance and being in the room with you. It's like a partner. It's not something you sit down and stare at like football.
That's fair. Yeah, I get that.
So a lot of people should not be sitting down and watching a game all by themselves. I wouldn't prescribe that unless it's a playoff game in which I might lock myself in a room since the Mariners made the playoffs and just wallow in whatever emotions I'm feeling at the moment.
Well, I'm not judging you for liking baseball.
No, I know.
I can't imagine. I can't imagine being you.
It's so far
I'm not that
from
strong.
Me. Is there anything that entertainment that you participate in that would be that far off the beaten path? Probably not, huh?
To where like the day it comes out, I'm like, I have to.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Right? Yeah. Lindsay, anything?
No, I don't think so.
Did you guys ever stand in line to get something? New iPhone in the early years,
Nope.
a gaming console.
Nope.
No gaming console for you?
No,
you weren't there
no.
for the PlayStation 3 launch,
No,
Lindsay?
not me. Shocking, I know, but no.
No, I've never waited overnight in a line for anything.
Yeah. Concert tickets?
No.
I've been in several lines.
This week.
What does that say about me? Ticketmaster
no, I think
lines
it's-
online.
No.
No.
I get out of there so fast.
No.
You guys don't get on there and you're trying to get tickets for the concert thing and you got to wait
Okay, maybe
behind
the
2,000
the
people?
closest thing to that level of commitment, I used to drive down to San Diego to buy guitars.
Okay, there
So
you go.
maybe that's the closest I would get is to like I mean, that's a multi-day,
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
But
The thing that I get still because of baseball, and I'm really glad of this, is I get appointment television that I talk about with people during and after.
Yeah.
Because nobody else does that anymore. It's all streaming.
Yeah.
And
That
so
makes
I
sense.
do get that, like, I have to sit down at 1:05 this afternoon to watch the beginning of the game. And I like that about me.
Yeah.
That I still have that.
And people love it. People love talking about it. And it's kind of like, I know Josh Cordell has been wearing different jerseys every day from teams that he's not fans of, but just because it creates conversations.
Yeah.
So
yeah. He
he's-
specifically wore a Jerome Kersey Blazers jersey the other day, which is super niche. And I'm in on it.
Yeah. And you had a conversation.
And I had a
didn't you?
conversation
There
with
it
him
is.
about
So
it.
it
Of
works.
course. No, it's very smart. You're absolutely right.
So maybe jerseys will be my new thing.
Can you imagine?
Yeah, no one will see that and be like, he's trying too hard. No, of course not. But
On a Sunday. You
Oh,
should.
please.
You should at like Super Bowl time.
yeah,
Go. Don't do it.
I won't.
Never mind. All right.
that's those cringy laughs I tend to get.
Lindsay and Evan just go full.
We start wearing jerseys.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is going
Oh,
on?
so weird.
Guys, I would like cry tears of pride. It's fun. I actually like that you guys aren't into it. I appreciate the balance. Because sports people are a lot, man. They're a lot.
They are. That's what I've been saying my whole life.